Welcome to your forecast. If you were hoping for an active late February weather pattern, you might just be out of luck because next week is looking to be very quiet across most of the United States. But don't let your guard down just yet because we are breaking down why this pattern is so uneventful. What are the things that could shake it up as we head towards March, and how La Niña's influence is showing up in those long-range trends. Let's dive right into the forecast. To start, let's take a look at our overall setup. We have a weak zonal flow when we look at the jet stream map across the United States, meaning that that jet stream is pretty flat and it's not very amplified. And what does that mean? Well, there are no big troughs or no ridges really across the United States as we head through this coming weekend. As we go through our Sunday, we are going to see heavy rain form along the Gulf Coast, spreading from Texas to Louisiana, Mississippi, into Alabama. This is going to be due to a weak disturbance in the upper levels of the atmosphere, but that rain is going to be persistent from Sunday morning through Monday evening. By the time we get done and we get to Monday morning, we could see potentially well over an inch in southeastern Texas, through parts of Louisiana into Mississippi. As we look at our temperatures across the United States, this is Sunday afternoon, we don't really see big temperature swings. Most of the United States is going to be between 10 degrees above and 10 degrees below their seasonal norms at that time. The exception being up across the Great Plains where you can be 15 degrees above normal, which is just crazy because just 3 days ago we were talking about temperatures that were 40 degrees below seasonal norms. We had temperatures approaching minus 40 degrees. By this weekend, it can be positive 40, an 80-degree swing. And if we look across the southwest into Arizona, into Southern California, again, that is an area where we would expect temperatures to be 10 to 15 degrees above normal. As that mild air continues to build in for our next week, Monday afternoon highs, we see in the desert southwest, in places like Phoenix, you're going to be approaching the mid-80s. Las Vegas, you're going to be in the upper 70s. The deserts of Southern California, you could be approaching 90 degrees. We're going to see 50s all the way up through South Dakota, 40s stretching up into Alberta, just north of the Canadian border. We could be touching 50. And we really don't see any signs of Arctic air across the United States or even the provinces of Canada for that matter. We really have to go far north than Hudson Bay to see any kind of temperatures that are significantly cold like we've seen this last week. And when we look at the overall moisture flow, those browns indicate drier air, the blues and the greens, deeper inflow of moisture, and we really don't see much moisture coming up from the Gulf. So what does that mean? It means less rain, it means less storm potential. But we still see some activity on our Sunday in the Pacific Northwest, where another system will move on shore Sunday that's going to bring mountain snow and heavy rains into Washington, Oregon, and into Idaho. But outside of that, we are looking at a relatively quiet start for this period. And as we move into the start of next week, the pattern remains very sluggish. Mild temperatures continue across most of the United States, thanks to that persistent southeast ridge keeping things stable. And as we go into our next week, a weak storm system may form across the northern plains, sweeping through the Great Lakes as we get towards our Tuesday. But we're really not seeing any good energy to support a large weather winter event as we move Wednesday into our Thursday. So for most of the United States, we are just stuck in a holding pattern. We are mild, we are dry, and we're very uneventful. But why is it so boring? The quiet pattern is really due to three main factors. It's a weak jet stream. We saw that earlier in the video. Pretty much a zonal flow across the United States. It prevents deep storms from forming. Ridging in the southeast helps keep the storm tracks locked in place. And if from our 500 millibar anomaly chart, we really don't see any intrusions of Arctic air. It's pretty much staying up above the Arctic Circle. And so that polar vortex is really just behaving itself. We don't have any major pushes of cold Arctic air to help stir things up. So without a big jet stream disturbance, without strong temperature contrast, we just don't have the energy for storms to develop across the United States. Now, just because next week looks quiet, it doesn't mean that we stay that way forever. Here are a few things that we are watching heading into late February into early March. There is an early storm system, a potential of one, around the 27th to the 28th. There are some models that are hinting at a more organized storm system developing later in the month, which would bring rain and storms to the Midwest and through the East Coast. Colder air is also trying to push a little bit into the east. We can see that here also with our Arctic Oscillation, because the Arctic Oscillation, where we've been extremely negative over the last 10 days, it will go positive over the next 7 days, meaning that Arctic air is being trapped up north, as we saw in the 500 millibar mark. But there are hints that it could go negative as we begin March. And if that happens, that will allow for stronger cold fronts to develop. Stronger cold fronts in the springtime tend to lead to severe weather potential increasing across the lower 48. And so we're going to watch for that active storm pattern into March, especially in the southern plains into the southeast. So while next week may be uneventful, the pattern could flip very fast as we head into the first week of March. And speaking of March, let's talk about La Niña and how it's shaping up. We've been in a La Niña pattern, basically a value of -1 or greater, since about mid-December. But we've seen over the last 10 to 14 days, that value has crept north of -1. It's been approaching -0.5. If it gets lower than a -0.5, then we're in what's called an end-zone neutral pattern. But right now, if we stay in this La Niña pattern, which there is about a 60% chance that we stay in a La Niña pattern through the middle of meteorological spring, it could lead to a stronger subtropical jet in the south, which would mean more storm energy this spring. It could also create an overall more active severe weather season. It could lead to more tornadoes across the plains in the southeast. And so from this chart, we're not fully there yet, but it is something that we are going to continue to watch as we move deeper into March and into April. So here, to recap everything that we've learned in this video, what to expect for our last week of February. There are no major storms expected throughout this entire period. We're going to be milder in the east, slightly cooler in the west, mainly the Pacific Northwest. There's going to be that persistent Pacific Northwest rain and snow pattern, but there's going to be limited moisture throughout the rest of the United States. In fact, over the next 7 days, we can look at our precipitation forecast, and we see those highest totals in the Pacific Northwest, into British Columbia, into the mountains of Idaho, where nearly 8 to 10 inches of rain of liquid precipitation could fall over the next week. Looking to the east, very little precipitation across the eastern half of the United States. And we're also monitoring the pattern for that late February storm, and the pattern changing possibly with the Arctic Oscillation flipping as we head into March. And as we look at that long-range pattern looking into March, we are going to see the potential for near normal temperatures stretching from California through Wyoming, the northern plains into the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley, stretching into the northeast. The real better chance of above normal temperatures are going to be confined down from Arizona through New Mexico, places like Albuquerque to Dallas to New Orleans, down through Florida. A better chance of above normal temperatures in those locations. And the below normal temperatures are going to be confined to the Pacific Northwest. Well, that's all for now. If you have found this video helpful, hit that like button, subscribe to the Weather Farm for more in-depth weather breakdowns. Drop a comment below. Are you enjoying the quieter weather pattern, or are you looking for something more exciting? Let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.